I want to talk with you about a story that was on the front of one of the papers this morning. The Attorney General, no less, calling on Nigel Farage to apologise for things he hasn't yet accepted he did, really.
Indeed. I mean, this is it's one of those stories that is just sort of rumbling away, Sheila, and it is unusual. I mean, we've got the UK's top law officer, obviously on a day when the legal system is in the spotlight, but talking not about that, but talking about what Nigel Farage may or may not have said decades ago. So this is Richard Hermer, who's a controversial figure, particularly on the right of British politics. He often comes in for a lot of flack for his attachment to the ECHR, among other things, very close personal friend of the Prime Minister. And the Attorney General has said that Farage had clearly deeply hurt many people, judging by their descriptions of his behaviour, and that his constantly changing denials have been unconvincing. He's spoken to The Guardian, talking to their political editor, Pippa Crerar, and he said, throughout his defensive responses, this is Hermer, to legitimate questions put to him, not once has Farage actually condemned antisemitism. This, of course, relates to, so it's been rumbling on for a week or two, the Guardian investigation that last month in November reported the testimony of more than a dozen former classmates of Farage at the elite Dulwich College in South London, who all have come forward and said that Nigel Farage, when he was there between the ages of 13 and 18, allegedly, came forward and said that he subject them to various forms of racist anti-Semitic abuse, including, one of them in particular, said that Farage, then 13-year-old Farage, would, quote, sidle up to me and growl, Hitler was right, or gas them, and sometimes added a long hiss to simulate the sound of the gas showers. Now, this has, as I say, been rumbling on for a few weeks, but the thing that's kind of made it worse is Farage's ongoing kind of changing, kind of not quite changing account of it, but certainly a sort of adopting different tones and a different sort of approach to the story each time. This is just a reminder of what he said last week to a BBC Wales reporter on the subject.
49 years ago, by the way, 49 years ago, have I ever tried to take it out on any individual on the basis of where they're from? No.
At school, categorically on the record, you did not racially abuse fellow pupils.
I would never, ever do it in a hurtful or insulting way.
That's not quite the same as not doing it.
It's 49 years ago. It's 49 years ago.
What difference does the time make?
Isn't it? Well, I just entered my teens. Can I remember everything that happened at school? No, I can't. Have I ever been part of an extremist organisation or engaged in direct, unpleasant personal abuse, genuine abuse, on that basis? No.
You're not quite... That's very, very caveated. You're not quite ruling this out. The question is, did you ever racially abuse fellow pupils in school? No. You've caveated it with a hurtful way.
Not with intent.
What do you mean not with intent? I don't understand what you mean by not with intent. What does that mean?
You wouldn't do.
But what does that mean?
No.
No what?
No. I have never directly really tried to go and hurt anybody.
You're opening the door there to perhaps you did it without meaning to offend.
Have I said things 50 years ago that you could interpret as being banter in a playground, that you could interpret in the modern light of day in some sort of way? Yes. But isn't it funny?
Okay, so you did say stuff to these people then?
I've never directly racially abused anybody. No.
And obviously, I mean, as the reporter was saying there, a sort of series of different accounts for it. And what Hermer is saying is that at no point has Farage directly condemned anti-Semitism or racism, but instead been sort of very, very defensive. And what's interesting about it is that this is something that clearly the Labour Party wants to prosecute in a political sense. We've had the Prime Minister talk about it, Prime Minister's questions. We've had the Chancellor talk about it in various pre-budget interviews. We've now got the Attorney General, Richard Hermer, mentioning it. So clearly the sort of political pressure on it rising, not least because many people would say Farage's account of it has been unconvincing. It's of course worth saying what Reform have said about this just today. He said, I can tell you categorically, this is Nigel Farage, that I did not say the things that have been published in The Guardian, aged 13, nearly 50 years ago. Isn't it interesting? You can hear his voice. I am probably the most scrutinised figure in British politics, having been in public life for 32 years. Several books, thousands of stories have been written about me, but it is only now that my party is leading in the polls that these allegations come out. I will leave the public to draw their own conclusions about why that might be. We know that The Guardian wants to smear anybody who talks about the immigration issue, but the truth truth is that I've done more in my career to defeat extremism and far-right politics than anybody else in the UK today from my time fighting the BNP. Many of those making these statements just happen to be political opponents. So again, I can categorically say that the stories being told about me from 50 years ago are not true.
And it isn't true either to say that only now are these claims emerging.
No, that isn't
There is
true.
more detail on some of these claims, but Michael Crick, the journalist, covered this story very similarly some years ago.
Indeed so. I mean, that's not true in what Farage said is there. As you say, Sheila, there have been more people, I think, have come forward, but to augment the accounts. But the substance of the story, as you say, emerged some, 15 years ago, I think back in 2013, when Michael Crick, the political reporter, brought forward this story on Channel 4 News, where he was at the time. Now, it was, it caused a bit of a ripple at the time, but clearly Farage's political position has transformed.
Nobody saw him as potential Prime Minister in 2013.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. No, that was in the run-up to the 2014 European elections. They hoped to top the poll and so on. Fine, but it was of a different. He's of a different order of magnitude as a political figure by comparison to then, and that is why. I mean, obviously, he's complaining about the scrutiny he's received, but part of that is, as I say, the changes in his political stature, if you like, with number one. But number two, it's his failure to put the story to bed, because, as we've heard there, he has been defensive and he has changed his account over the days and weeks that the story has been running.
And on that question of putting it to bed, it was interesting. I spoke to Michael last week, Michael Crick, about this, and he said, "Do you know what?" He said, I don't really think he's necessarily ongoing holding some of these views that people are saying he said to them when he was a kid. It wasn't Michael's sense that was the case. But he said, why doesn't he just meet them, apologise to them and say, I don't remember the detail of this, but I'm so sorry if I wounded you, if I hurt you. I clearly don't think this now. And I was a kid. And I put that thought to you, Lewis, in light of your interview at the weekend.
Well, I was about to bring
George,
that up. Yeah,
with George Aberonier, because we spoke about it yesterday on air as well.
I always listen, even when you don't kind enough to invite me on.
I listen to you, you listen to me.
It's just
quid pro quo. Yes. But there was something in that, wasn't there, about accept your error, however huge,
I was about to bring up exactly the same thing, because I think it is apposite and it is interesting. Because, of course, what you're dealing with in both cases, and this, again, just in case any of the listeners, shockingly, unlike me, weren't listening yesterday, this relates to George Aberonier, who was the president-elect of the Oxford Union, and he sent that egregiously stupid text basically saying that he was glad that Charlie Kirk had been killed, someone with whom he debated at the Oxford Union.
That's right.
And I had him on my show on Sunday, on the imaginatively titled Sunday with Lewis Goodall, and he apologised there. And he said, he had nonetheless, and he really regretted it. And he had, and both these things can be true at once. It was stupid. He has apologised. But he also had received appalling racist abuse. And he still is. I can see it on my timeline today because I've tweeted it, about it. And I think it is both instructive because, of course, what you're dealing with in both cases is to children or adolescents or young men. I mean, Aberonier was a bit older than Farage was. Obviously one was, longer ago. But I note that many of the same people who are slamming Aberonier are saying, exactly the same people, Farage, this is ridiculous, it's his school days or whatever, he's just young, Well, it's one or the other, isn't it? And I suppose the difference is, in fairness, if you were sort of defending Aberonier, is that Aberonier said he's sorry, he regrets it. It was something that was stupid.
He's taken responsibility.
He's taken responsibility for it. Now, Farage has both sort of hinted that it may have happened, but he didn't do it with intent, but also sort of denied the substance around it and so on. So, as you say, I mean, there is a world where Farage could have chosen and elected to meet with the people involved. He could have said, of course, some recollections may differ. It was a long time ago. I also think, just speaking personally here, I think we do have to be a bit careful about sort of extending the statute of limitations about what we say to 13-year-old you or 15-year-old you, or what we say privately. We've got to be grown up about these things. But it's also true to say, and so I think Farage absolutely fair enough there. And of course, if he feels strongly that it didn't happen, then fine. But it is clear that we've got 20 people, not just one person, not just two people, and there were contemporaneous notes that were uncovered by Michael Crick 15 years ago. It's clear that something seems to have occurred, and there is certainly a recollection that is the case, that Farage obviously denies the substance of it, but nonetheless. So it would be perhaps a good idea, just politically, if nothing else, to show that you're taking this seriously, to try and engage with it and nullify the story. But that isn't happening so far. Farage is just simply saying that it's a smear.
And I know you're amused by my love of the great popes of this world.
Absolutely.
But this is why I think the Catholic practice of sending small children to confession is a good one.
Right. Yeah.
Even though I often made my sins up when I went to confession.
Yes.
Just invent things that I'd done because I was such a good child.
Yes, that's true. I suppose that's true. I mean, is there a particular pope that you have in mind for this?
My favourite.
Yes.
Oh.
I mean, we were talking about our friend Boniface IV before we came on air.
Does not cut it with me.
Oh, really?
It's John.
What do you think, listeners? 0345 6060973. Boniface IV, cruelly maligned or great hero?
John Paul II every time.
Oh, yes,
every time for me.
course.
I'm a big fan of the new guy. He's doing
The
well
new guy,
in Lebanon.
Big Leo.
Yeah, little Leo.
Little Leo.
Yeah.
Little Leo. I mean, the truth is, Sheila, though, just going back, painfully on topic. You see what I did there? The truth is that it would seem. I mean, it hasn't actually been a great couple of weeks for reform. They've had a cracking year. Clearly, I mean, they've managed to consolidate.
Polls.
They've consolidated their position in the polls. I think they must have led now in 120 polls or whatever it happens to be. But two things are also true. One is there are very few polls which have shown them get over sort of the 30% mark. I think there is actually one today just about, but generally speaking, they're sort of well under that. And I remember speaking to reform people at the start of the year, basically saying, this is the year of consolidation and growth. It's the year where we know we've got the kind of sort of right wing, we've got whatever, now we're going to sort of try and sort of dilute a little bit and sort of show people, we're not the threatening people that some people think we are, we haven't got extreme views, blah, 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 and get to that sort of solid 35% mark, which
more generalised support.
Yeah, and therefore, that if you get into a general election and your lead will inevitably erode a bit, you've got a bit of cushion. That hasn't really happened. And it's true to say as well that in the poll of polls, if you like, if we take the polls in aggregate over the last couple of weeks, it does seem that there has been a bit of a drop-off, and I think that there's a few explanations for that. It could partly be a bit of this. There have been a few stories, certainly since their slightly bizarre party conference turn and some of the things that happened there with the vaccine conspiracy and so on, which may have sort of lended credibility to some people's fears about this party, which prevents that expansion of support. But also, what have we been talking about the last few weeks? We've been talking about the economy. And when we're talking about the economy, they
still
not
feel
as
like
potent.
outliers, don't they?
They're not as potent. Their potency is around immigration. It's around kind of sort of anti-establishment, some of the culture war stuff for sure. Their lead on the economy, or they don't have a lead on the economy in lots of these polls. The Conservatives certainly over Labour tend to do better. Badenoch's also, to be fair, had a sort of decent run of things. She's kept herself in the news, kept herself in the conversation, got the Tories back in the media conversation a little bit, which again is to the detriment of reform. So I think probably the last month or so has been one of their worst, I would say. It's all relative because they've had a great year, but it's certainly taken, I think, some of the edge off.